The evening sky bled into gray. A drizzle whispered across the glass walls of the Grandview Mall, turning the marble floors outside into slick mirrors of light. Neon signs flickered, reflecting off puddles like broken stars. Near the entrance, a little girl stood barefoot on the wet concrete. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, clinging to her thin arms like damp paper. She looked no older than 9. In her hands, a small paper cup trembled, half full of rainwater instead of coins. A security guard shifted impatiently. "Move along, kid. You can't stand here." The girl lifted her chin, her voice small but steady. "Please, sir, can I just stand inside for a minute? It's so cold." That one line cut through the noise, so raw, so innocent it almost didn't sound real. Inside, behind the tall glass doors, a luxury world gleamed. Perfume ads shimmered on digital screens, men in suits checked diamond watches, laughter echoed from cafes scented with espresso and wealth. Just beyond that glass, the girl's breath fogged the pain, a faint, fading cloud against the world that didn't see her. The guard sighed. "Orders are orders," he muttered, and reached for her arm. But before he could, a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up under the canopy. Its headlights sliced through the drizzle, scattering silver across the pavement. The door opened, and Ethan Cole stepped out, tall, immaculate, every inch of him the billionaire legend people whispered about. A man who built cities. A man who never looked back. He adjusted his cufflinks, phone pressed to his ear, his voice sharp and efficient. "No, Daniel, move the meeting to Tuesday. I'm not flying out tonight." "Yes, I'll sign the deal in the morning." He didn't see the girl. Not really. Just a blur at the corner of his gaze. A problem for someone else to handle. The guard straightened immediately. "Evening, Mr. Cole." Ethan gave a brief nod, slipping into the dry warmth of the mall without breaking stride. His leather shoes echoed against marble, click, 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 a sound too clean to belong in her world. Behind him, the automatic doors slid shut with a soft hiss. And just like that, silence. The girl blinked through the glass. For a heartbeat, she saw his reflection against hers, the billionaire's perfect life overlapping her trembling frame. The world had drawn a line between them, invisible but absolute. Rain began to fall harder. Her paper cup overflowed. Still, she whispered to herself. "Someday. I'll buy my own warm place. Just wait, Mama. You'll see." Her voice was almost lost in the wind. Inside the mall, Ethan's reflection flickered on the glass as he paused near the elevator, for no reason he could name. Something tugged at the edge of his memory. A sound, maybe. Or just that faint voice he thought he heard through the storm. He turned his head slightly, and for one brief moment, their eyes met through the glass. Hers were wide and wet, not pleading, just waiting for someone to see. His gaze lingered for half a second. Then the elevator doors closed. The reflection vanished. Outside, the girl wrapped her arms around herself and sank to the ground. The security guard hesitated, muttered under his breath, then stepped away to light a cigarette under the canopy, pretending not to notice her anymore. The world went on. Cars passed. Music played from inside the mall. People laughed. Only the rain stayed, gentle, constant, almost like pity falling from the sky. And there she sat, alone against the glow of the billionaire's empire. Unseen. Unheard. But not forgotten, not yet. Because fate, cold and patient, had already begun to turn. Morning rose like a polished coin, bright on one side, cold on the other. Through the glass walls of Cole Industries Tower, sunlight spilled into a space so perfect it looked unreal. Floors gleamed. Coffee machines hissed like obedient servants. The hum of money filled the air. Invisible but constant, like background music only the rich could hear. At the top floor, Ethan Cole stood before a panoramic view of the city he built. Skyscrapers glittered below, steel and glass stretching into the clouds. Every window reflected his empire: smart cities, energy grids, self-driving systems, everything efficient, profitable, and soulless. His assistant, Daniel, read from a digital tablet. "Sir, your new proposal for urban renewal has doubled in investor interest. The board wants you to announce the expansion in New York next week." Ethan didn't answer immediately. His gaze was far off, down toward the streets. From this height, people looked like tiny moving dots, distant, harmless, forgettable. "Fine," he said finally. "Book the flight. Let's move the charity auction to next quarter. We're overspending on PR." Daniel nodded. "Understood, sir." Behind him, the office was a masterpiece of minimalism: no family photos, no laughter, no trace of a life lived beyond numbers. Just success, contained in marble and glass. He walked to his desk, where a single headline blinked from his screen. "Homeless population rises 18% despite economic boom." Ethan scrolled past it without a pause. His world didn't have space for problems he couldn't measure or monetize. Across the city, miles away from the tower, the world looked different. A rusted bridge arched over a forgotten canal. Beneath it, the little girl from the mall huddled beside a pile of blankets and plastic bags. Morning wind crept through the cracks of her makeshift shelter, tugging at her tangled hair. She stirred awake at the sound of traffic overhead, a hollow, rhythmic thud of tires crossing metal. Her stomach growled. She pulled a crumpled photo from her pocket, her mother, smiling, holding her as a baby in front of a construction site. The sign behind them still showed faint letters. "Coal Development Project, building tomorrow." Her small fingers brushed the image, tracing her mother's faded smile. "Good morning, Mama," she whispered softly. "I'm okay. Just hungry again." She tied her hair with a piece of string and stepped into the street, dragging a small cart she'd found behind a store. Inside it, a broken teddy bear, 2 cans, and a half loaf of bread wrapped in a napkin. She wasn't begging today. She was collecting. Plastic bottles. Anything she could sell. As she walked past cafe windows, she caught glimpses of another life: people laughing over coffee, children in uniforms, warmth behind every pane of glass. She smiled faintly at a little girl her age pressing whipped cream to her nose inside a bakery. For a moment, she pretended she was that girl, just one more child in a world that still had room for innocence. Then the traffic honked, breaking the illusion. She moved on. Back in the tower, Ethan's morning continued, meetings stacked like dominoes. A journalist interviewing him for a tech magazine asked, "Mr. Cole, with your resources, do you ever think about expanding into humanitarian work?" Ethan's answer was sharp, almost rehearsed. "Empathy doesn't build infrastructure. Systems do." The room went quiet. Cameras clicked. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. By noon, the girl found herself in an alley behind a restaurant. The smell of roasted chicken hung in the air. She peeked through the door as a waiter threw leftovers into a bin. "Hey! Get out of here," he barked when he noticed her. She froze. Then slowly stepped back, eyes on the food. A kind older woman emerged from the kitchen, holding a small paper bag. "Let her have it," she said softly. "She reminds me of my niece." The girl accepted it with both hands, whispering, "Thank you, ma'am." The woman smiled. "Stay safe, sweetheart." As the girl disappeared down the alley, the woman sighed. "There are too many like her." Evening returned, golden and cruel. From the glass tower, Ethan looked down once more, city lights flickering like distant stars. His assistant had left. The office was quiet, save for the soft hum of the air conditioning. He took a sip of coffee, but for some reason, it tasted bitter. Outside, under the same fading light, the little girl sat beneath her bridge again, sharing the bread with a stray dog that had followed her home. "Here," she said, tearing it in two. "We both need to eat." The dog wagged its tail, resting its head on her lap. She smiled weakly, humming a tune that her mother once sang. In that moment, two worlds coexisted, one of steel and solitude, one of hunger and heart. He had everything except connection. She had nothing except kindness. He lived in glass towers. She survived under broken bridges. And though they didn't know it yet, both their lives were about to collide, in a way neither could forget. Rain returned that evening, harder this time, slicing through the city like cold needles. The streets shimmered beneath a flood of headlights, and the sky rumbled as if it were tired of watching people forget compassion. At the corner of 7th Avenue, a small figure darted across the road, clutching something in her arms. Cars blared their horns. Tires hissed on wet asphalt. It was her, the little girl from the bridge. And in her arms, a tiny stray puppy trembled, soaked and shivering. She stumbled onto the curb, shielding the pup beneath her tattered coat as a Rolls-Royce glided through the intersection, black and sleek, like a shadow cutting through the storm. Inside, Ethan Cole leaned back in the leather seat, scrolling through reports on his tablet. The wipers beat a steady rhythm across the windshield. "Rough night," murmured his driver. "Streets are flooding again." Ethan didn't look up. "That's the city's problem, not mine." The car turned the corner, and then braked sharply. Screech. The seatbelt snapped across Ethan's chest as his driver slammed the pedal. Through the windshield, the girl stood frozen, just feet from the hood, her small frame shaking, her coat torn, water dripping from her hair. She wasn't crying. She was clutching the puppy like her life depended on it. For a moment, time stopped. The rain, the thunder, the glow of the streetlights, all frozen in a silent heartbeat. Then the driver leapt out. "Hey! Kid, what are you doing? You could have been killed." The girl looked up slowly, eyes wide with fear and shame. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't see the car. I was just trying to help him." She lifted the trembling puppy. He was in the road. The driver sighed, trying to wave her off, but Ethan's voice came from behind him, low, calm, and unfamiliar even to himself. "Wait." Ethan stepped out into the rain, umbrella in hand. The wind caught his coat, the storm soaking his shoes within seconds. He looked at the girl, properly this time. She was thinner than he remembered. Paler. The kind of child you could see right through, fragile, yet burning with stubborn life. Something inside him shifted, though he didn't understand why. "You again," he murmured, more to himself than to her. Her lips parted. "You were the man at the mall." He blinked. The memory hit him like lightning, her face pressed against the glass, her voice trembling, "Please, sir, it's so cold." The words he'd ignored. Now, drenched and barefoot, she stood before him again, the world's quiet reminder that some moments never disappear until they're redeemed. The driver looked between them, confused. "Sir, should I get her something warm?" Ethan said, interrupting. "And, call the vet. The puppy's shaking." The girl frowned, clutching the puppy tighter. "He's okay. Just cold. I don't need help." Ethan crouched slightly, lowering the umbrella so it covered her too. Rain pattered softly on the fabric above them. "Everyone needs help sometimes," he said. "Even me." She hesitated. Her eyes searched his. Looking for the lie, the pity, the thing she'd seen in every other face. But this time, there was none. "Come on," he said quietly, nodding toward the car. "It's just for a ride. You can keep the dog warm." She shook her head at first, then glanced down at the puppy, who whimpered in her arms. Her lips quivered, torn between fear and trust. Finally, she nodded. Inside the car, warmth wrapped around her like a blanket. She sat on the edge of the seat, dripping water onto the leather, too afraid to move. Ethan watched her from the corner of his eye. The driver passed back a small towel and a bottle of water. She took them both with quiet hands. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. "Leah." He smiled faintly. "Pretty name." She tilted her head. "What's yours?" "Ethan." "Thank you, Mr. Ethan." Something in the way she said it, soft, sincere, pulled at a place in his chest he'd long forgotten existed. As they drove, her eyes wandered across the glowing skyline outside. "Do you live up there?" she asked, pointing toward the tallest building. He followed her gaze. "Yes. For now." She nodded slowly. "It must be nice, being high enough that the rain can't find you." The words hung in the air, simple and profound. Ethan didn't reply. He couldn't. Because for the first time in years, someone had said something that made him feel small, human. They stopped at a nearby 24-hour diner. Ethan ordered soup and tea for her, coffee for himself. She blew on the spoon carefully, feeding the puppy tiny drops of broth first before tasting her own. "Why'd you help the dog?" Ethan asked quietly. "Because nobody else did," she said. That answer hit deeper than she knew. He leaned back, watching her. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about meetings or profit margins. He was thinking about how wrong it felt that a child had learned kindness from loneliness. Rain tapped against the window beside them, steady and soft. Outside, cars rushed past. Inside, something unexplainable had shifted, a seed of connection taking root in two very different hearts. When they finished, Ethan stood to pay. The girl folded her hands and said, "Thank you, Mr. Ethan. For the soup, and for not yelling." He paused at the door, the words catching him off guard. "You're welcome, Leah." She smiled, a small, fragile smile that somehow felt like light breaking through gray. As they stepped outside, the rain had calmed. The street shimmered beneath the glow of street lamps. He watched her walk away, the puppy tucked safely inside her coat. He could have called after her. He could have offered money, a home, a future. But he didn't, not yet. Because even though he didn't know it, fate wasn't done writing their story. Tonight was only the second knock at his heart. The third would change everything. The rain stopped sometime before dawn. The city glistened, washed clean, as if the storm had tried to erase its sins but ran out of reach before touching the forgotten corners. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse, walls of glass opening to the skyline, the city lights stretching endlessly below. Everything he owned sparkled, but nothing felt alive. The silence pressed on him like a weight. He turned on the TV, news anchors talking about markets, profits, politics. None of it filled the hollow in his chest. He turned it off again. In his mind, he kept seeing her, the little girl with the trembling hands and the quiet courage, feeding her puppy before herself. He could still hear her voice, because nobody else did. That sentence clung to him. He poured himself a drink, but the glass just sat in his hand, untouched. Something inside him whispered that he'd crossed paths with her twice now, and the third time wouldn't be coincidence. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the penthouse as if testing him, daring him to care. He buttoned his shirt, trying to shake the thoughts away, but the reflection staring back at him in the mirror didn't look like the man who had it all. It looked like a man who'd finally realized what he didn't have. He grabbed his car keys and walked out. The streets were still wet, puddles reflecting fragments of the city, glass towers above, broken hearts below. Ethan found himself back on the same avenue where the accident had nearly happened the night before. He didn't know why. He just followed the tug in his chest. He parked, stepped out, and scanned the sidewalks. Then he saw her, sitting on a bench outside a laundromat, hugging her puppy beneath a towel, humming softly to it. The sound was barely there, but it reached him through the noise of the city like a thread of warmth. He walked closer, careful not to startle her. "Leah." She looked up quickly, eyes wide with recognition and confusion. "Mr. Ethan." He smiled faintly. "You remember?" She nodded. "Of course. You bought me soup." Her innocence made him chuckle quietly. "I suppose I did." He glanced at the small paper cup beside her, this time filled with old coins, not rainwater. Her hands were red from the cold. "You shouldn't be out here," he said gently. "Do you have somewhere safe to stay?" "I do," she said quickly, too quickly. "It's just, sometimes they lock the shelter early. I don't mind waiting." He could tell she was lying, but it wasn't the kind of lie meant to deceive. It was pride. Dignity. He looked down at the puppy. "How's he doing?" She smiled, a little brighter. "Better. I named him Lucky." "Lucky," he repeated softly. "That's a good name." Her stomach growled suddenly. She froze, embarrassed. Ethan pretended not to notice, but he'd heard. "Come on," he said, motioning toward a corner cafe. "Let's get breakfast." Lucky too. Her eyes widened. "Really? Really?" Inside, the cafe smelled of butter and coffee, the kind of warmth that made you forget the world outside. Leah watched through the glass as Ethan ordered pancakes and milk for her, a small bowl of scrambled eggs for Lucky. The waitress gave her a cautious look, but Ethan's presence turned judgment into politeness. They sat by the window, sunlight touching their table. She ate slowly at first, unsure if it was okay to enjoy it. Ethan watched her gently, his coffee untouched. "You can eat as much as you like," he said. "It's okay." Her shoulders relaxed. She smiled, a small, grateful smile that reached her eyes. Between bites, she asked, "Why are you helping me?" He hesitated. "Because last time, I didn't." She blinked, not understanding. He looked out the window, voice low. "At the mall. You asked to come inside. I heard you. I walked away." She tilted her head. "You didn't have to stop then." The simplicity of her forgiveness made him exhale. "Maybe not. But I should have." Silence lingered, filled with the soft clinking of plates and the hum of morning chatter. Then she said something that caught him off guard. "You're helping now. That's what matters." For a man used to deals, deadlines, and power, those words felt like grace. After breakfast, he bought her a small blue coat from a nearby shop. She protested, shaking her head. "I can't take it. It's too much." "It's just a coat," he said. "You'll need it." She looked down at it, brand new, soft, warm, then at him. "Then it's not just a coat." Her words stopped him again. He crouched to her level, helping her slip it on. "There," he said softly. "Perfect fit." She smiled shyly. "Thank you, Mr. Ethan." He glanced at his watch, meetings, calls, the usual. But for once, none of it seemed important. "Leah," he said, "if you ever need anything, come to this address." He handed her a small card with his company logo. "Ask for Daniel. He'll reach me." She held it carefully, as if it were made of glass. "Okay." As she walked away with Lucky trotting beside her, Ethan stood watching her go, the blue coat bright against the gray morning. He didn't realize it yet, but that simple act, the coat, the breakfast, the listening, had done more than help a child. It had cracked open something he thought was long dead inside him. For the first time in years, Ethan Cole felt human. And for Leah, that blue coat would become more than warmth. It would become a symbol of the moment her life began to change. Days passed. The city rolled on, loud, heartless, shining as always. But something inside Ethan Cole had changed. He found himself distracted in meetings, his focus blurring whenever reports mentioned housing projects, urban renewal, or cost efficiency. Every phrase now echoed with the image of a little girl in a blue coat, holding a puppy that depended on her warmth. He had Daniel discreetly send food and supplies to a few shelters across town, no publicity, no branding. Just quiet help. But deep down, he knew it wasn't enough. Guilt was a stubborn ghost, it stayed until you listened. One Thursday afternoon, Ethan's car idled outside the same street where he'd met Leah. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for, maybe just a glimpse. Then he saw her. She was sitting near a soup kitchen, drawing on a piece of cardboard with a dull pencil. The puppy, Lucky, dozed at her side. Her new coat was zipped up, a bit dirty now but still bright against the gray. He stepped out of the car, unannounced. When she looked up, her face lit with the kind of smile that made every bad day worth enduring. "Mr. Ethan." "Hi, Leah." He crouched beside her. "What are you drawing?" She turned the cardboard toward him, a rough sketch of two stick figures holding hands beside a tall building. One was small, with braids and a blue coat. The other wore a tie. "That's us," she said proudly. "And that's your tower." He smiled. "You made me taller." She giggled. "That's because you are tall." He laughed softly, a sound even he hadn't heard in years. Then a woman's voice came from behind them. "Leah. They're serving now." It was one of the volunteers from the soup kitchen, Mrs. Harris, a gentle woman in her late 50s with tired eyes but a kind smile. When she noticed Ethan, her brows lifted slightly. "You're Mr. Cole, aren't you? The one from the news?" Ethan nodded politely. "Yes. Ethan Cole." She hesitated, then looked between him and Leah. "I didn't realize you two knew each other." "She helped me feed Lucky," Leah said proudly. Mrs. Harris smiled faintly. "That sounds like her." Something in the woman's tone, part warmth, part sadness, made Ethan curious. "You've known her a while?" he asked. "Since her mother passed," Mrs. Harris said softly. "Poor woman, worked herself to the bone for nothing. Company laid her off just before Christmas. They said they were restructuring. She never recovered." Ethan's pulse slowed. His voice dropped. "Do you remember where she worked?" Mrs. Harris nodded, looking away. "Coal Industries. Maintenance department, downtown office." For a moment, everything inside him went still. Leah's mother. His company. The silence between them thickened, filled with unspoken things, regret, history, consequence. Mrs. Harris sighed, unaware of the storm she'd stirred. She was a good woman. Always said she believed Mr. Cole would make things right one day. Ethan swallowed hard, his throat dry. "She said that?" "Yes," Mrs. Harris replied gently. "Said people change when they remember where they started." I suppose she hoped it was true. He turned away, his jaw tightening, eyes stinging from something he didn't want to name. Leah watched him curiously, sensing the heaviness but not understanding it. "Mr. Ethan, are you okay?" He crouched, forcing a faint smile. "Yeah, kiddo. I just remembered something important." That night, back at his penthouse, he sat in the dark with only the city lights flickering against the windows. On his desk, he placed the folded sketch Leah had given him, the one of them holding hands beside his tower. He stared at it for a long time. Then he pulled up his company's old employee files on his laptop. It didn't take long to find her, Angela Moore, maintenance technician, terminated under operational downsizing. He read the report twice. His company had cut her department to increase quarterly profits, an automated decision, approved by him with a digital signature he didn't even remember signing. Her severance, minimal, Her appeal, denied. 2 months later, she died of pneumonia in a temporary shelter. And her daughter, Leah, had been left alone. He pressed a hand to his face. The truth sank in like ice water. He hadn't just ignored a little girl at the mall. He had helped create the world that broke her in the first place. The next morning, Ethan drove straight to the soup kitchen. Leah was there again, feeding Lucky scraps of bread. When she saw him, she waved, cheerful as ever. "Hi, Mr. Ethan." He sat beside her on the curb, still holding the sketch. "Leah," he said quietly, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you remember your mom's name?" She nodded. "Angela. She used to clean big buildings. She said one day she'd buy one for me." Ethan's throat tightened. "She sounds like she loved you very much." "She did," Leah whispered, smiling sadly. "She said people like us don't stay invisible forever." He looked away quickly, blinking hard. "Mr. Ethan?" "Yes, Leah." "Are you sad?" He forced a small smile. "A little. I just wish I'd known her." She tilted her head. "You would have liked her." He nodded slowly. "I'm sure I would have." Later that evening, Ethan made a call. "Daniel," he said, his tone calm but heavy, "I want a full audit of our layoffs in the past 5 years. Every name. Every story. If we hurt people, I want to know." "Sir, that could take weeks." "Then start tonight." When he hung up, he stared again at the child's drawing on his desk, her simple hope, her innocent forgiveness. In a world built on numbers, this little girl had become his only truth. And for the first time, Ethan Cole wasn't chasing profits or headlines. He was chasing redemption. Ethan Cole was not used to laughter echoing through his home. For years, his penthouse had been a museum of silence, the kind of silence that whispered success but tasted like loneliness. But now, that quiet was gone. It began the day he made a decision that shocked everyone in his world. Daniel had barely finished reading the report when Ethan said it. "I'm adopting her." The assistant blinked. "Sir, with all due respect, adopting a homeless child? That's not a simple process. It could attract media attention." "I don't care," Ethan said. "She has no one. I won't let her grow up believing the world is this cruel." Daniel hesitated, searching for words. "Are you sure this isn't guilt talking?" Ethan looked up sharply. "Maybe it is. But if guilt can save one life, I'll take it." There was no further argument. Within weeks, legal teams moved mountains, papers were filed, and background checks were done. The press sniffed around the story, hungry for scandal, but Ethan shut them out with a single press statement. Every child deserves to be seen. And so, on a quiet morning bathed in winter sunlight, Leah Morcole officially entered his life, and his home. When she first stepped into the penthouse, Leah froze. The ceiling stretched high like cathedrals. The floor gleamed. Glass walls framed a skyline of gold and steel. It was beautiful, too beautiful. Her small voice trembled. "Are we allowed to touch things here?" Ethan knelt beside her. "You can touch anything you want, kiddo. This is your home now." Her eyes widened, then she ran forward, her shoes clicking across the marble as she gasped at every light, every flower, every reflection. Lucky the puppy barked excitedly, skidding on the polished floor. Ethan smiled, not the kind he gave investors or cameras, but the soft, unguarded kind he hadn't worn since his parents were alive. That night, the dining table looked absurdly large, a space built for 12 people, now shared by 2. Leah dangled her legs from the chair, swinging them nervously as she poked at her food. "This is too quiet," she whispered. Ethan chuckled. "You're right." He reached for his phone, played soft jazz through the speakers. The warm rhythm filled the space, and Leah smiled. She tasted her mashed potatoes and lit up. "This is really good. Did you make it?" Ethan laughed. "Not yet. But I can learn." Her eyes sparkled. "Then I'll teach you. Mom used to say cooking makes people love you faster." He froze for a second, then smiled gently. "Then I'd better start learning fast." Days turned into weeks. Leah filled the house with life, laughter, chatter, noise, color. She painted on old canvases, turned the balcony into a mini garden, and gave every security guard a nickname. Ethan found himself lingering longer at home, canceling business dinners, choosing to read bedtime stories instead of reviewing reports. One evening, he walked into the living room and saw her asleep on the couch, cradling Lucky, her small body wrapped in a blanket. Beside her lay a drawing, this one detailed and careful. It was a picture of him, smiling, with a tiny crown on his head, and the words, "My hero who didn't know he was one." Something broke open in his chest. He sat down beside her, brushing a curl from her forehead, whispering quietly, "Thank you for forgiving me." Ethan began changing in ways even he didn't recognize. He reopened his company's community programs, this time with his personal oversight. He set up a foundation under Leah's name, funding education and shelter projects for children. At every board meeting, he began asking one simple question. How does this decision help someone who can't help themselves? Some called him sentimental. Others called him reckless. But for the first time in his life, Ethan Cole felt human again. One weekend, they drove outside the city to a quiet field. Ethan had arranged a small picnic under the stars, sandwiches, hot cocoa, and blankets. Leah looked up at the sky, her eyes wide with wonder. "Do you think my mom can see us?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded. "I think she's proud of you. Of both of us." She smiled, curling closer to him. "Can I tell you a secret?" "Of course. When I first saw you at the mall, I thought you looked sad, like you were missing something." He blinked, surprised. "What do you think I was missing?" She pointed at his chest. "A heart." He laughed softly. "And do I have one now?" She nodded seriously. "A big one. You just forgot where you left it." He looked at her, his chest tight with emotion. "Thank you for reminding me, Leah." Before bed that night, Leah gave him something, a small bracelet she made from colored threads and beads. "It's for luck," she said shyly. "Mom used to say, when you wear something made with love, bad things stay far away." Ethan smiled, slipping it on. "Then I'll never take it off." She yawned, curling under her blanket. "Good. 'Cause you'll need it." He laughed, tucking her in. "Why's that?" She whispered sleepily, "'Cause the world doesn't like it when people get too happy." Her words lingered in the quiet night, innocent, but almost prophetic. Ethan sat there a long time after she fell asleep, watching the stars through the glass walls, his heart full of peace and fear all at once. For the first time in years, he had something to lose. It started with a knock. Not the gentle kind Leah used to give on Ethan's office door. This one was sharp, official, the kind of sound that never brings good news. When Ethan opened it, two strangers stood there. One was a woman in a gray blazer holding a clipboard. The other, a man with tired eyes and a badge clipped to his belt. "Mr. Cole?" "Yes," Ethan said cautiously. "I'm Agent Monroe from Child Protective Services. This is Officer Reyes. We received a report regarding your recent adoption." Ethan's chest tightened. "A report? From whom?" "I'm afraid we can't disclose that, sir," Monroe said calmly. "But the complaint suggests that Miss Moore may be in an unsafe environment." Leah was standing at the top of the staircase, clutching the railing. "What's happening?" Ethan forced a steady voice. "It's okay, sweetheart. Just a misunderstanding." They inspected every room, every cabinet, every corner of the penthouse. Ethan followed them silently, rage simmering behind his calm exterior. Leah stayed close to Lucky, watching nervously as strangers took photos and notes. When the woman asked her, "Do you feel safe here?" Leah looked confused. "Yes, ma'am. Mr. Ethan takes care of me. He makes pancakes on Sundays." The woman smiled softly but still scribbled something down. After nearly an hour, they finally left, promising a follow-up evaluation. Ethan stood in the foyer long after the door closed, his fists trembling. He called Daniel immediately. "Find out who made that report." Within hours, Daniel returned with the answer. It was an anonymous tip. But the source traces back to an email from within your company. Ethan's blood ran cold. "Someone from Coal Industries?" Daniel nodded grimly. "It gets worse. The board's been murmuring, they think you've gone unstable. They're considering a motion to remove you as CEO." Ethan sank into a chair, jaw clenched. "Because I adopted a child." "Because you changed," Daniel said quietly. "And people don't like when power grows a conscience." By morning, the tabloids had exploded. Billionaire adopts homeless girl, publicity stunt or midlife crisis. Inside the mansion, child welfare questions raised. Reporters swarmed the gate, cameras flashing, drones hovering. Leah watched the chaos from the window, confused and frightened. "Did we do something bad?" Ethan knelt beside her, voice tight. "No, sweetheart. Sometimes people hurt others just because they don't understand kindness." She hugged him suddenly, whispering, "It's okay. Mom said truth always wins." He smiled faintly, brushing her hair. She was a smart woman. But inside, his heart ached. He'd fought business wars his whole life, but this was different. This time, the battlefield was his home. 3 days later, the worst blow arrived. During a follow-up meeting with CPS, Agent Monroe cleared her throat awkwardly. "Mr. Cole, there's been a development. A man has come forward, claiming to be Leah's biological uncle." Ethan froze. "Uncle?" "He says he's her next of kin and is filing for custody." Leah's head snapped up. "Uncle? I don't have," she paused, frowning. "Wait. Uncle Raymond?" Her voice trembled. "He's not nice." Ethan's eyes hardened. "What do you mean?" She looked down. "He used to yell at Mommy. He said she was stupid for working too hard. When she got sick, he took her money. He hit me once." Monroe's face softened. "We'll look into that, Leah." But the law didn't move fast enough. Within days, Raymond appeared with lawyers, a man in his late 40s, slick, smirking, reeking of alcohol and greed. "I just want what's best for my niece," he said, his tone dripping false innocence. "She belongs with family." Ethan's jaw locked. "You mean she belongs where there's money?" The man shrugged. "You can call it what you want. But she's blood. You're not." The custody hearing was brutal. The opposing lawyer painted Ethan as an unstable billionaire with emotional guilt issues. They waved headlines, questioned his motives, even insinuated manipulation. Leah was brought to the stand, a small child in a big courtroom, clutching her stuffed puppy for comfort. The judge asked gently, "Leah, who do you want to live with?" She hesitated, glancing at Ethan. "I want to stay with Mr. Ethan. He's my dad now." Raymond's lawyer objected, saying she was coached. Ethan's heart broke watching her tiny voice drowned in adult noise. In the end, the judge ruled a temporary separation, pending further evaluation. Leah was escorted away, crying, her small hand reaching back for him. "Mr. Ethan. Please don't let them take me." He tried to follow, but an officer blocked his way. "Sir, please step back. Her cries echoed down the hallway until they faded into silence. That night, Ethan sat alone in the dark. Leah's drawings were still on the refrigerator, her handwriting crooked, her words bright. Home is not a place. It's a person. He picked up the bracelet she'd made him, the one of colored threads and beads, and held it tight in his fist. Then he whispered into the quiet. I promise to protect you, Leah. And I will. Even if the world tries to stop me. Outside, thunder rolled across the city skyline, a storm brewing, mirroring the one rising inside him. Because now, Ethan Cole wasn't just fighting for redemption. He was fighting for his daughter. The storm came hard that night, rain hammering the windows of the penthouse that now felt too big, too quiet, too empty. For days, Ethan had done nothing but fight. Court appeals. Legal motions. Pleas to judges. But bureaucracy moved slower than grief. Leah had been taken to temporary kinship care, a nice-sounding phrase for being trapped with Raymond Moore, the man who saw her as a ticket to money. Every night, Ethan sat by the window, replaying her last words. Please don't let them take me. It was a Sunday morning when Daniel burst into the room, pale and breathless. Sir, there's something you need to see. He turned the TV on. A local news anchor spoke over shaky footage, a police cordon, flashing lights, and a small blue coat lying on the ground near an abandoned park. Authorities are searching for a missing child believed to be Leah Moore, last seen in the custody of her uncle, Raymond Moore. Ethan's heart stopped. He didn't hear the rest. Not the reporter's voice, not Daniel calling his name. All he could see was that coat, her coat. He grabbed his keys, ignoring Daniel's protests. Find his address. Now. He drove through the rain like a man possessed, tires screeching across wet asphalt. When he reached Raymond's house, police were already there. Sir, you can't be here, one officer warned. I am her father, Ethan snapped. Where is she? Gone, the officer said grimly. We found signs of a struggle. The neighbor heard shouting. The uncles disappeared too. Ethan's vision blurred. Gone where? The officer hesitated. We think he might be headed toward the industrial district, the old rail yards. He used to work there. Before the words finished, Ethan was already running back to his car. Night fell fast as he reached the rail yard, a graveyard of rusted trains and broken dreams. Rain turned the ground into mud, and distant thunder rolled across the sky. Leah, he shouted, his voice echoing between empty carriages. Leah, it's me. Can you hear me? Somewhere in the dark, a faint cry answered. Mr. Ethan. His heart leapt. He ran toward the sound, through puddles, debris, shards of glass, until he found her. She was tied near an old generator, shivering, bruised but alive. Raymond stood a few feet away, a bottle in one hand, anger in the other. You think you can just buy people's lives, Cole, he snarled. You stole her from me. She's not yours, Ethan said steadily, rain dripping from his hair. You hurt her. You used her. Raymond staggered closer. She's family. You. Ethan moved first. Years of bottled rage erupted as he lunged forward, knocking the bottle aside. They crashed into the mud, struggling violently. A flash, the sound of shattering glass, then silence except for Leah's frightened sobs. Raymond stumbled back, clutching his arm, then ran into the darkness, disappearing into the rain. Ethan untied Leah quickly, pulling her close. It's okay, sweetheart. I've got you. She buried her face against his soaked jacket, trembling. You came. Always, he whispered. I promised. Police arrived minutes later, lights flooding the darkness. Raymond was found unconscious near the tracks, arrested on multiple charges. Paramedics examined Leah, declaring her safe but shaken. Ethan refused to leave her side. When they wrapped her in a blanket, she clung to his arm and wouldn't let go. "Don't let them take me again," she whispered. He looked straight at the officer. "No one will." In the days that followed, news of the rescue spread like wildfire. The same media that had mocked him now called him the billionaire who risked everything for his daughter. But the damage was done. Coal Industries Board forced his resignation, citing emotional instability. He signed the papers without a fight. When Daniel protested, Ethan simply said, "I already have what I was missing." He moved out of his high-rise office, leaving behind the empire he'd built, the glass towers, the money, the name. Because none of it mattered anymore. Leah was safe. And that was everything. One night, Ethan sat by Leah's bedside as she slept, still recovering from shock. The nurse entered quietly. "She's lucky you found her when you did." "A few more hours and..." Ethan's voice cracked. "I wasn't lucky. I was late." The nurse smiled gently. "No, sir. You were right on time." He looked down at the bracelet still tied around his wrist, faded now, the colors dull but unbroken. For the first time in years, he whispered a prayer, not for wealth or power, but for gratitude. Because the girl he once ignored had become the reason he was alive. The next morning, when Leah woke up, she smiled weakly. "Did we win?" she asked. Ethan laughed softly through tears. "Yeah, kiddo. We won." She looked up at him, eyes full of trust. "Then can we go home now?" He squeezed her hand. "Yes, sweetheart. Let's go home." And this time, he meant it. Not the penthouse, not the tower, but wherever she was. That was home. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and rain. It had been 2 days since the rescue. Leah's fever had broken, and the bruises along her arms had already begun to fade. She lay in bed surrounded by stuffed toys and sunflowers sent by people who had once judged Ethan but now called him a hero. Ethan sat beside her, the blue bracelet still on his wrist, the one she had made him from bits of thread and faith. When she stirred awake, her first words were a whisper. "Is it morning?" "It is," he said softly. The clouds finally ran out of rain. She blinked up at him, small smile forming. "Does that mean we can go home now?" He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "Yeah. But we're not going back to the tower. We're going somewhere quieter, by the sea. Somewhere with room for you and Lucky to run." Her eyes brightened. "Will there be pancakes?" "Every Sunday," he promised. A week later, the headlines had changed tone. From fortune to fatherhood, Ethan Cole's new beginning. But Ethan didn't read them. He was too busy carrying boxes into a small seaside cottage on the edge of the city. The walls smelled of fresh paint and salt air. A tiny garden waited out back, already filled with Leah's drawings pinned to a clothesline. When she stepped through the doorway, she gasped. "It's tiny." "Exactly," Ethan said with a grin. "No elevators. No marble floors. Just a home." She twirled once in the center of the room. "I love it." Weeks passed in peace. Every morning they walked along the beach with Lucky racing ahead, his paws scattering sand into sunlight. Ethan learned to cook simple breakfasts. Leah learned to read aloud from storybooks. One evening, she found him staring at the sunset, thoughtful. "Do you miss being rich?" she asked. He smiled. "I'm richer now than I ever was." "How?" He pointed toward her. "Because I finally have something I can't lose in a merger." She laughed, running to him. "That's cheesy." "True." Ethan stood by the window, coffee in hand, watching the ocean turn to silver beneath the rising sun. It had been exactly 1 year since the day he met her in the rain. 1 year since a cold billionaire learned what warmth really meant. Outside, Leah was already dressed for school. Her backpack was twice her size, the same one she'd once carried on the streets, but now patched with colorful stickers and hope. "Dad, hurry," she called. "We're gonna be late." He smiled. The word still hit him differently every time. "Dad." "Coming," he said, grabbing his keys, but not the expensive ones anymore. Just the ones to their little blue car, worn and ordinary. As they drove toward the small town school, the radio played quietly. A local reporter was talking about Angela's Promise, the foundation Ethan had built. In just 1 year, over 400 families have been housed. The founder, Ethan Cole, declined interviews but said simply, "We're building homes, not headlines." Leah looked up from her seat, proud. "That's you." He laughed. "That's us." At the school, the principal met them at the entrance. "Mr. Cole, thank you again for donating the new library. The children are thrilled." Ethan waved it off. "The books did all the work." Leah squeezed his hand. "You're not shy anymore." He winked. "Only because I've got a good teacher." When she ran off to join her classmates, he stood for a moment watching her, the sound of her laughter blending with the chatter of children who didn't know the pain she'd lived through. It was as if the world had rewritten her story, and his. That afternoon, Ethan returned to the city, not to his old skyscraper, but to the place where it all began, the alley behind the shopping mall. The same spot where a small, hungry girl had once tugged at his sleeve and asked for help. He stood there for a while, remembering. The rain. Her eyes. The choice he almost didn't make. A homeless boy wandered by, no older than Leah had been back then. Ethan knelt down, handing him a wrapped sandwich and a folded bill. "Take care of yourself, kid," he said softly. The boy nodded, eyes wide. "Thank you, sir." As he walked away, Ethan whispered, "No, thank you." Back home, Leah sat at her desk, writing something carefully in a notebook. When Ethan peeked over her shoulder, she smiled and covered it. "It's a secret," she said. "Oh. Should I be worried?" "No," she grinned. "You'll find out someday." That night, when she was asleep, he found the page tucked under his pillow. It read, "Dear Dad. I'm writing this because sometimes I forget to say thank you. You gave me a home, but more than that, you gave me back my smile. Mom always said angels don't have wings, they just show up when we need them most. You showed up. Love, Leah." Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, tears slipping silently down his face. He folded the letter and placed it beside the drawing on the fridge. Months later, Angela's Promise opened a new shelter in another city. On the front wall hung a small plaque that read, "For every child who thought they didn't matter." Ethan and Leah stood together as they cut the ribbon. The cameras clicked, the crowd applauded, but his eyes were only on her. "Ready to build another home?" he asked. She nodded, grinning. "Always. Sometimes the greatest miracles begin with a moment of kindness." One man's indifference became his redemption. One girl's hope became a light for hundreds of others. And somewhere between a broken bridge and a billion-dollar tower, two hearts found what money could never buy, family. A slow pan across the sea at sunset. Leah's laughter in the wind. Ethan's hand holding hers. The old bracelet still on his wrist. Sometimes the richest people are those who choose to care. Screen fades to black. Soft piano music rises. If this story touched your heart, share it, because kindness multiplies when it's seen.